Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new, thank you so much for clicking on the video.
Thank you.
Right here, we're going to be talking all about learning quotes for literature. It's probably one of the hardest parts of the literature exam, I think, because you've got so many quotes that you need to learn, and it can sometimes feel really overwhelming, and you're not even sure which quotes should I be learning. So I'm going to go through in this video what determines a good quote to learn, how to learn them, and some other tips as well at the end that are going to help you get the most out of your time when it comes to picking those quotes and then actually learning them, and trying to reduce the time as well that it takes you to actually learn them.
Nice.
If you do find the video useful, please do subscribe to the channel. It really helps grow the community and help other people find the information as well. But that said, let's crack on with learning quotes and working out which quotes that we need to choose. So first of all, so many quotes, so little time.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
And that's actually a really important thing to note straight off. It takes time to learn quotes. So something I'm going to go through in the video a little bit later is how much time should you give yourself to learn the quotes? And ultimately the answer is always probably more time than you think, but we'll come on to that. So the four things that we're looking at is, how am I supposed to choose the right quote? I haven't got time to learn all of these quotes. Some steps to help you remember the quotes, and then finally, how many quotes should you probably have for each of your texts? I'm not really going to cover the poetry anthology quotes that you need to know today, because there's a slightly different formula to apply to work out which quotes you need to learn. So I'm just focusing on the literature text. So that will be your Shakespeare text, your 19th century text, and your modern text as well, which will either be a play or it will be a book. But it would be you would apply the same techniques to all of those three. So how to choose the right quote. This is really important because by far, one of the biggest mistake I see people make in their literature essays is they'll choose a quote, they'll put a quote into their paragraph, but it kind of doesn't make sense why it's there. It kind of doesn't really relate to the question. So that's the first issue, is that actually they've clearly not learned enough quotes that are going to help them with this particular question. So they end up just with random quotes that they know. And that puts them in a bad place because it means you can't actually answer the question with the quote you're using. So that's the first problem. And then the second problem is a really common one, which is people don't realize how important it is to be able to analyze techniques within your quote. So what they'll do is they'll go through all of their notes from class maybe, or notes they've made themselves, and they'll pick out quotes, and they won't think to themselves, oh, I'm going to need to do some AO2 language or structure analysis on this quote. And they don't think that, so they end up choosing a quote that leaves out a huge part of the mark scheme. Because the AO2, the language and structure part of the analysis, part of the mark scheme, is actually worth as much as just understanding the text, which is AO1. So that's really important. So AO1 it's got to be able to allow you to answer the question, which is the first thing I mentioned. And secondly, you've got to be able to show your understanding of the text and show interpretations from that quote. Think about that. That means there's no point learning a quote that you don't understand, that you're not actually sure what you would say about it or what theme or ideas it links into at all. So make sure that the quotes that you choose, you're actually really comfortable and confident with in actually knowing what to say about them. So really choose the quotes incredibly carefully, because these are the things you're taking into battle.
But they'll never take our freedom!
You know, these are the things you're basically choosing an army or choosing a team to then take into the match or the battle. So you've got to choose that really carefully, because if you choose the wrong team, if you choose the wrong quotes, you could end up losing, which you don't want, because that's going to obviously cost you grades. So make sure you really understand the quotes. That's absolutely fundamental. That's going to help you with AO1. AO2, kind of mentioned it there, analyzing a technique in the quote and to be able to write about its effect on the reader. again, if you choose a quote and you're not sure about what techniques you should analyze in that quote, it's probably not worth taking it in your team, because you're not going to be able to get any of those AO2 marks. I haven't actually written it on this document, but AO1 is worth about, if it's AQA, it's worth 12 marks. AO2 is worth 12 marks, and AO3 is worth 6 marks. I say AQA because the majority of schools do AQA, so that's why I keep referring to AQA. But you'll always, every single exam board has AO2 and AO1 in all of their literature questions, so that's just something to bear in mind. So a template that these quotes should kind of fit into. I've got a couple of examples here from the most popular literature texts. So I've got one from Romeo and Juliet at the top and one from Macbeth at the bottom. So starting with that Romeo and Juliet quote. The quote I've chosen is star-crossed lovers, obviously from the prologue right at the very beginning. So I've now got a template that I need that quote to fit into. Otherwise, it's not going to help me get all of the marks. So first of all, AO1. What theme does it fit into? Well, it fits into the theme of fate and love. So that's going to give me some interpretations. It's going to be able to allow me to answer any question based on fate and love. One thing I didn't mention, AO3, linked to a context point. That could be historical information, or it could be like a writer's intention or a key idea. Just thought I'd mention that because I skipped over it. AO2, we can take from this a metaphor, and its effect is that it helps to present love as powerful and pure. Why? Well, because stars can be interpreted as powerful and also pure as well. And so it helps to communicate their love as kind of very powerful and very pure. AO3. So this is where we're going to get our like historical kind of context in there, maybe some historical information. And this is quite easy because if you think about it, back in the late 1500s into the early 1600s when Shakespeare is writing, they don't have Google Maps. What? They don't have maps really at all. I mean, they do have maps, but what they use for maps a lot of the time is the stars. Like that was actually a really big part of their society, of their lives, was stars. They believed that's where the heavens were. They believed that's where God exists, up in the stars. And we still kind of have that notion to this day as well, up in the heavens, referring to, you know, the stars above us. But for these guys in Shakespearean times, that's going to be massively important. So that then helps me get to my AO3 point because it's literally got star in it. So I can then talk about the importance of stars to people. So everyone in the audience there, or anyone reading it, but probably the audience in Shakespearean times, is probably going to relate to the wonder and the power and the beauty of stars, because that's the belief they already have in what these things above them are. So that's a really good quote, because it does all of the three things I need it to do for my mark scheme, AO1, AO2, AO3. So that's a good quote. Let's have a look at the Macbeth one. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Lady Macbeth quote here from Act 1, Scene 5. Let's put it through our template. Let's see if it's a good quote, because remember, it's got to do all three of those assessment objectives. Otherwise, it's not a good member of my team. It's not going to help me do everything I need it to do. AO1, what's going to be my point? What's my interpretation on this? Well, it obviously fits into the theme of deception and potentially ambition as well. Lady Macbeth's ambition to try and educate Macbeth on how he can be better at his deception to kill the king. So those are going to be my interpretation points that I'm going to make from the quote. AO2, simile, because we've got look like the innocent flower. And a juxtaposition as well, because flower is very beautiful, serpent, very evil. So you've got a bit of juxtaposition there as well. And of course, what she's saying here is to don't look like you're a threat to anyone, but actually underneath be the biggest threat there is. Basically, be the devil, be evil. So it's got a really good AO2 point. Now, this is actually a bit of a bonus quote. Why? Because it's got two techniques. Two techniques for the price of one quote. That's the dream. That's what you want to be looking out for with a quote, because it's going to give you so much to talk about. You don't want a quote that's like limiting you. You want a quote that's just throwing stuff at you to analyze and talk about. And then finally, what's our AO3 point? Well, back in Shakespeare times, very, very religious. They would have believed that everything that was written in the Bible is absolutely to be taken seriously. And of course, in the Bible, the serpent represents the snake, that represents the devil. So you've got Lady Macbeth using that sort of idea of the serpent being the devil and telling Macbeth to be devilish. Garden of Eden, that kind of stuff. So big rule to take away here. When we look at the mark scheme, AO1, AO2 and AO3, those assessment objectives, we've got to check that the quotes that we pick to learn enable us to get marks for all of those assessment objectives. No point choosing a quote that just gives us a little bit of something to say and gives us a bit of interpretation. We want it to have a technique in it. Otherwise, it's not maximizing its potential. We want to be able to make a link to context. Otherwise, it's a bit of a half-hearted quote. So the next thing I want to talk about is this concept of it takes a lot of time to learn quotes. And it does. And I think we've just got to be straight up with that.
Do it!
I always think that when someone goes into the exam with knowing that they don't have enough quotes in their head, it's simply on them. Like, no one else can put it in your head. The teacher can go over it in class again and again and again. But it's your responsibility to get it into your brain. So really, if you're going in there with not enough quotes, it's simply just because you probably haven't given it enough time to learn them well enough so that they stay in your head. You might find that on Monday, yeah, I knew them all. By the time I got to the exam on Friday, I could remember only a couple.
No, God!
Well, that means you just got to keep doing them through the week. You've got to really try and retain it. And that just comes from time. It's just investing that bit of time to get like really confident that it's in your head. So generally with this, I would say start sooner than you think. There's no point putting loads of pressure on yourself and rushing to get them all learned in a couple of days. You know, if you know that you've got your mocks coming up in 3 weeks' time and you're like, I'm just going to leave the quotes till the end of the final week so that they've got a better chance of staying in my head, that's actually the worst strategy. It's actually better to do it little and often. So rather than say, right, 3 days before the exam, I'm just going to do 4 hours of learning quotes. Honestly, you're going to have so much pressure on you. You're going to be putting so much pressure on you to learn those 4 hours worth of quotes. It's not going to be a very good environment for your brain to take in the information. What would be better is if you split that 4 hours up across those 3 weeks and just do a little bit here, a little bit there. You know, maybe week 1, you might start with, I'll just do 10 minutes every other day. And then maybe week 2, you say, right, now I'm going to do 5 minutes every day. And then right at the very end, week 3, maybe you say, right, I'm going to do 10 minutes a day. I'm going to do 5 minutes in the morning on quotes, 5 minutes in the afternoon on quotes. Because that's actually going to really help you retain that information little and often rather than trying to cram it all in. Trust me, it literally never works. So when should I start learning them? Well, this is actually quite a difficult one for me to give you a set answer on that because it depends where you are and what you've got coming up. So really, you kind of need to give yourself a justifiably good amount of time before that particular test that you've got coming up. To be honest, anywhere less than 4 weeks, I think, before a mock or the exam, I think you should already have learned pretty much all of your quotes. And now you're spending that 4 weeks just kind of revising them in your head, testing them for yourself and things like that. So really just like straight away. If you're in year 10 and you've got mocks coming up, definitely start. Again, 4 weeks, I think you really need to start learning them. But there's nothing to say that you can't start learning them before 4 weeks, to be honest. Generally your school will have told you when your mocks are going to be. And if you're doing GCSE, you'll definitely know when your exams start. So there's actually no excuse really to not start learning them as soon as possible. How can you remember them better? Okay, I've got a theory. It's a logical theory, so I guess there's probably some science behind it, maybe. But for me, it kind of makes sense when you're learning something to try and use as many of the senses as possible. And what I mean by that is that rather than just reading them with your eyes and just taking it in with that one sense of sight, if you were to speak them out loud, you're effectively engaging your hearing, you're engaging your eyes, and you're engaging your muscle memory of your mouth as well, which is part of memory, muscle memory. So I would use as many of the senses as possible. I would read the quotes out loud. And I think you could probably apply this to any subject. If you've got to learn a load of equations for chemistry or physics or something like that, or learning a lot of like nitty gritty information for biology, I'd learn them out loud. I'd want to test myself so I can hear it out loud, because then I'm learning through as many senses as possible, which is going to have a better chance of me retaining that information. Flashcards, I think, are really helpful. Really, really helpful. What I would probably do is maybe put like a theme or a character on the front, and then on the back, I would put my best 4 or so quotes, however many you can fit on the page, or you might want to split it into multiple pages of flashcard, because it's a really good way of testing yourself. You can look at that character on the front or the theme and just think to yourself, right, okay, it's card 1. So card 1 is that quote, that quote, that quote. Check. Boom, nailed it.
Pow.
Great, moving on to the next one. So flashcards kind of makes it, I think, a little bit more interactive. And then my last one, testing yourself and making it into a game, making it interesting. Putting a little bit of, maybe putting a reward on it. So if I get all my flashcards right, I'm going to get like half an hour doing something I want to do, whether it's like playing on a PlayStation.
The trash! Fix the game! It sucks playing the shit!
Going out, playing with my dog or whatever it might be. I would kind of make it into a game, so you get that kind of reward element from it. So those bullet points just kind of review that. So don't just read them in your head, because that's only one sense. Engage as much of the brain as possible. Be creative with your flashcards. Don't be boring.
Boring!
So actually make them engaging for the eyes. Use color, stick on little pictures or whatever. Make it more fun, because you're going to have to be spending a long time learning these quotes. So you might as well kind of make it a bit more interesting for your brain while you're at it. Make it fun. And don't do it alone. Maybe in the initial stages, you can do it by yourself, sitting up in your room or whatever, speaking them out loud, trying to get them into your brain. Some people I know record them doing it on their phone or something and then listen back to it. That's fine, because you're using that sense. So that's a good thing. But then I think once you're relatively confident with it, get someone else in there with you. Do it with a friend.
Oh, friend!
Do it with a parent. Do it with a sibling. Make them hold the flashcard and make them test you, because it makes it way more interactive, and you're going to have a much better chance of it staying in your brain. Ultimately, what we're doing with all this is trying to maximize your time so that you're not spending more time learning it than you need to. You can actually learn it a bit quicker, so you're going to save time for other subjects or other topics. And set yourself a target or a reward. I love chocolates. So I tell you what, normally I go through a pack of chocolates once a day. That wouldn't be very healthy, but you know what I mean. So what I'll do is I'll say I'm only going to have my pack of chocolates once I've got a certain percentage right. And then maybe each week you make this percentage higher and higher and higher. So by the end, you should be having to work really hard for that reward for those chocolates. How many do I really need? Okay, someone asked me this the other day, and I actually kind of answered it with a question, which actually I'd never done before in like 9 years of going through this stuff. And it really helped that student, and it kind of helped me as well a little bit. So if you're asking how many quotes do I need to learn, ask yourself this. If you were allowed to take in a page of A4 notes, or as many pages of notes as you wanted into the literature exam, that'd be the dream, wouldn't it? Just take in as many notes as you want. How many quotes would you put on those papers? I asked a student this, and they said, well, I'd like 100, I'd put on loads. And I said to them, well, then that's the answer, isn't it? That's how many you would want to know. Because you're basically saying, well, I can't take in paper, but I can take in my brain. If I want 100 quotes on my paper that I would take in if I was allowed, I want those 100 quotes into my brain. You're going to have to work really hard to get them in there. That's a lot of quotes. I don't think you actually need 100. But it kind of makes the point of, well, it's probably as many as you can learn, right? So I think about how many you would write on that page. You know, if it's 50, try and learn 50. At least try and learn them. Ask yourself how many themes are in the text. A lot of exam boards split their potential literature questions into a theme or a character question. So really, you want to make sure that you've got quotes to cover every single theme. I would generally say 6 quotes per theme. Let's say per 5 main themes, because sometimes there are sub themes. Let's say, you know, there's 5 or 6 themes. I'd try and learn about 6 quotes. Gets you to 36. How many points or paragraphs will you aim to write? Okay, well, you're going to aim to write 3 or 4 paragraphs. And probably closer to 4, and you're going to want to have at least 2 quotes per paragraph. So you're probably going to need at least 8 quotes that you're going to be using for that question. Remember, we don't know what question we're going to get. So it's actually 8 quotes basically for every potential question we can get. So it's obviously always more than you think is the point that I would make there. How many points or paragraphs? We've done that one. How many quotes? We've done that one as well. It's about 2 quotes per paragraph. So probably need to be writing 4 paragraphs. Aim for at least 2 quotes per paragraph. Be prepared to use 8 quotes in your essay. I would recommend 30 quotes basically per literature text, because some quotes are going to be used for multiple themes. In fact, again, that's a dream quote. Just like I was saying earlier, my dream quote is one that gives me multiple techniques. Another dream quote is one that's going to give me multiple themes, because it's going to cut down the amount that I need to know overall. Is there anything else I need to know? Be prepared for theme-based and character quotes. Theme-based quotes, character quotes. So one thing that I would say is a really good idea is, once you've got all your quotes, let's say you write all of your quotes on one page, right? You've got that page over here. What I would then do is I would, on another page, write essay plans. And in that essay plan, I would go back to the template that I used earlier on in the video, AO1, AO2, AO3. I would look at each quote. So let's say I'm doing Macbeth. I've got the theme of deception. We've already got one quote for that. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Stick that into my essay plan for deception. And then I need to find another 5 or 6 quotes on my page over here. And then under each quote, I'm going to write down what's my AO1 point, what's my AO2 point. So what's my technique in it, and what's my AO3 linked to context. And then once I've put all of the quotes that I had over here on this page onto my essay plans, don't need that page anymore, that can go. Then I'm just going to learn the essay plans. That's going to help you even more in the exam, because it means as soon as you look at the question, into your brain, think, right, which essay plan am I using for that? I'm going to use that one. What are my quotes? I can see them. I've got my 6 to 8 quotes there. I'm ready to write. I don't even need to plan the essay, because I've already planned for that particular question, that theme question, let's say. I already know what my 3 to 4 paragraphs are going to be and what my 2 quotes in each paragraph is going to be. That's the dream. So I would compile all of my quotes. I would put them into essay plans based on theme or character. Then I would learn those essay plans with the quotes for each of those paragraphs. Something I mentioned earlier, some quotes link to multiple themes. They're great. It just cuts down the amount that you need to know. And the final thing, really important, remember, choose a quote that gives you all of the assessment objective opportunities. If you can't remember them, go back to the beginning of the video, AO1, AO2, AO3, context, techniques, understanding of the text, and your interpretations. And there we go. That is pretty much, I think, all of the important things to think about when you are considering learning all the quotes that you're going to need to learn. I think really one of the most important things in there, I think, is the concept of doing it out loud, doing it in a quiet place, doing it where you can be super focused on it. A lot of people sometimes say to me, I've got a long, car ride. I'll probably try and learn them in the car. And I think that's a very good environment to learn them in, because you've got so many distractions going on. You've probably got people in the car. Hopefully you're not driving it yourself. You've got so many people in the car. You've got stuff whooshing by your windows. You might be in a place you've never been before. You might want to look out the window. You've got too many distractions. You want to be in a nice, calm, centered place where you can just go through those quotes in your own time, not rushing, out loud so you don't feel self-conscious. Try learning quotes in a public place out loud. You'll look like an absolute nutcase. So yeah, doing them by yourself just takes away all those distractions, all that self-consciousness, and I would just do them out loud. I think that really is the key takeaway I want you to think about, because I think it's going to help you retain those quotes a little bit more. And I think little and often, like planning earlier, I think is super important. So there we go. If you enjoyed the video, if you found something useful, if I said something that you'd kind of never thought about before, do me a massive favor. Leave a like on the video. Maybe subscribe to the channel if you'd be interested in more videos that I'm going to put out. If you are in year 10 or year 11, on the end screen, I'm going to put a link to a podcast that I've done with a grade 9 GCSE student who's only in year 13 now, so it's quite fresh for him. He goes through all of the things like he would do differently, things that he thought worked really well for them. He's got some little tips and tricks that really helped him like learn stuff or prepare for exams better. I definitely recommend checking that out. But yeah, other than that, thanks so much, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, and I'll catch you in the next one.